There are some episodes that hit you in the gut, and this one is going to stay with you long after it ends. Today, you're going to meet Christy, who was 70 pounds at 16, dying from an eating disorder that nobody saw coming because she looked perfect. She survived childhood sexual abuse, a marriage filled with betrayal, and the devastating loss of her twin sons. But this isn't just a story about pain. This is a story about what comes next. Because today, that same woman is running a 7-figure firm. She's a powerhouse, proof that no matter what breaks you, you can still choose to rise. This episode is about what it takes to turn your worst chapters into your greatest comebacks.
I remember hitting age 40 thinking, if I looked back at my life, I think I've experienced some form of trauma or another every single year of my life by age 40. Now, what's interesting is now at 46, okay, I feel like you are all of your experiences, right? Like you are a product of your entire past, and you can't change your past. It's what you do with it today.
This conversation will make everyone rethink what it is to survive, really, and thrive. Because reading your story, I think you could write a book, just so you know. I think it's powerful. I am super appreciative, I want you to know, to have you share all of your childhood trauma, the eating disorder, your marriage, and the success too, because I think that's a big thing with when we have all of these things happen to us, how, we can thrive, right? So I want to dive in because you have a lot, actually. I want to talk about the truth behind perfection. Because I think we have a life, a lot of times I think of like social media and all of these different platforms. We all have this life that looks amazing and we're smiling and we're happy and we're on vacation. But the truth behind perfection and what's really happening isn't really always what we see on the
Oh,
outside. So at 16, you were 70 pounds and near death. Can you share that moment?
oh goodness. So I would say, I guess I might take you to like leading up to that moment. Like, how did I ever find myself in that place anyway? I was always such the chameleon. I'm like one of those people that can get along with and love, and I accept everybody, whether it be like, the smokers in the parking lot or the preppies, or, the jocks, all of that, as well as the broken people. I tried out for cheerleader and the dance team, and I was so passionate about doing all of that. And, I wanted to become like the next Miss USA. Back then, like I feel like those pageants, they were really huge. They were like, it's a big event when they'd have that thing. And anyway, I feel like, okay, in my young mind as like 12, 13, 14, it was like, okay, this is what an American woman should look like. And so I need to aspire to be that person, the Miss USA pageant type thing. Anyway, so with the dance stuff though, I tried out. Now here's the thing. I've always really, really struggled a great deal with social anxiety, really bad. And I got diagnosed with social anxiety for the first time when I was 15. So when I went in to do the tryouts for these dance teams, it's so amazing. I was like, I could do the splits, I could do the toe touches like nobody else, all of that. And I put so many hours, hard work into it. And I just, when it came to like coming out on the stage, I would just freeze up. And I didn't make the dance teams. And I just about, in my, I don't know, perfectionist tendencies, passion, I live life with a lot of passion. I just wanted to just die because I didn't make the dance team. That's a little bit dramatic, right? But I committed myself, okay, so I put all these hours and hours and work and time into doing dance. Now I am going to put all of that into this eating disorder, and I'm going to let that like run my life. And it was always frustrating because in my attempt for the control, which is like, okay, I'm going to teach my body how to survive off of 700, then 600, then 500, then 400, then 300 calories. I'm going to do this countdown, ridiculous. But I'm going to control the calories. And then what happens when you don't control that? The self-loathing can be ridiculous. But somehow I conquered that. Okay. I accomplished getting down to 70 pounds, which shows if I put my mind to something, the mind is a very powerful tool. So understand that about yourself and then realize, yes, you could do terrible things with that powerful mind of yours, or you can do some really amazing things and change the world. What are you going to do with, your knowledge, your all these attributes and qualities that you've been blessed with? But yeah, so I actually I had a really, really rocky relationship with my mom, and I had tried previously. The first time I got diagnosed with anorexia, I was 12 years old. But I went to, the behavioral psychologist to discuss it. And it ended up being that it was more like I could see how it was hurting my mom. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to share this at all. I'm just going to suffer. Anyway, so the trigger was, I got my driver's license, and the very same day I totaled my mom's car that she had just gotten that day, had to go into the doctor. He was alarmed at my appearance and was like, her heart is barely beating. We're going to go put her in the hospital. But here's really where I'd say it got out of control and really, really bad was as I would seek for things to control how much I put into my body, how much fuel and energy I put into my body, I realized that a quicker way that when I made a mistake, I could just purge. And that ended up I mean, I might even say like I have quite a bit of an addictive personality, and that became like the new addiction that, oh, I made a mistake, I can easily fix it. Well, every day is a mistake, and everything you put in your mouth is a mistake. And so that's how I rapidly like got down to where I was.
You said you excelled at it.
Yeah, yeah. Because again, if you put your mind to something, your mind is a very powerful tool. You hear about like self-fulfilling prophecies. You plant seeds in your mind. Be careful the things that you feed in your mind and be careful the people you surround yourself with. And I remember they had put me like on some drugs, like one of them was called Risperdal, I think. And me at 70 pounds, where I had aspired, what was the original goal? It was to look like Miss USA. I clearly like missed the mark and went on this downward spiral and looked so far from it. I remember this drug, I had a terrible reaction. And by that point, I was having severe panic attacks like all day long because my body had no reserves. My heart was giving out. My organs were breaking down, everything like that. And so, the panic attacks were just another thing that was very, very hard and scary to deal with. As a 15-year-old girl, like life is not like it was this was not what I envisioned life to be. And you know what? This is not happy. I don't even want to live. This is miserable. I'm hurting other people. People are crying over me. I'd be better off if I wasn't here. All those terrible, terrible thoughts that go through your mind. Now, wouldn't it have been great if I would have had in my life some uplifting person like you or I, okay, that could be like, come right in there and explain how life works and change, some of these very, very, faulty thoughts that I clearly had programmed and ingrained in my brain that were not true. And, life does not get harder. Life does not get worse. You are loved. You are worthy. All the things that a child at that age should be hearing. But anyway, the Risperdal, I turned into this, like, I must have looked like a 90-year-old woman, just hunched over. I was so unhealthy. And I tried to go home, and I remember just having hallucinations. Like, I walked in the bathroom, and there was like an elk's butt in the door. And it scared me. And I went and got back in the bed. And then I would hear like snakes slithering and crawling up the windowsill in the bedroom. And I just remember this night staying up all night. And I truly thought that I was going to die that night. And so that was the next day. They said that if I was sent back for any reason to that hospital, that they would stick a feeding tube in me.
What do you think was the lowest point? Was it that conversation?
Well, this is what ended up happening. The next morning, I told my mom that she could take me back down there, almost like I was freeing her. And now my fear was if I go back, they let me know that they would stick that feeding tube in me. This was all an effort to control energy going into my body. What does a feeding tube do? It puts energy into your body against your will, and you don't have control how much or how little they're going to do. So they did what they promised. They stuck the feeding tube in me, and literally during that whole entire time, I would say my mind left my body. I don't remember any of it whatsoever. The next minute I remember, and it could have been 2 weeks or a month later. I don't even know or remember that. But I sneezed one day and it sneezed out the feeding tube. And I felt like that was when I came back to life. And I wish that I could say to you that I was cured. It's not that easy, not at all. And I remember comments from the other girls and stuff at that time. Now, mind you, if you saw pictures of me at 15, before all this happened, I was a beautiful girl. I was a 4.0 student. I had the whole world ahead of me. I even remember during that time feeling so dark and just wanting to die. Like on this road, again, you find yourself in a loop to either which direction are you going in your life? Are you focused on improvement? Or do you find yourself in a downward spiral? And that can be really hard to get out of, because to get out of a downward spiral, there has to be some big thing that happens to interrupt that and put you on a different course, like some big, huge thing. Sometimes it's divorce, sometimes it's death, or a massive health issue. But anyway, I wish that I could just say, oh no, it just got easier. And the feeding tube, I sneezed it out and I was better. I learned my lesson. No, it ended up being for me many, many years of isolation. The kids at school were afraid of me. I mean, I even remember a gal that lived up the street from me that was in my church. It's called a ward. Okay. She's in my ward, and she said, I can't believe that you would show your face at church after what you've done. And hearing that from her made me believe that that was what everybody said. Hence, that reaffirms to me isolation is better. Also, you find those people who will accept you. And do you know the most accepting people? If you're only looking to be accepted, the most accepting people are those that will tolerate and accept anything. And I felt like that was easier for me. So I found myself in a very bad crowd that came from unhealthy backgrounds. Mind you, I came from a wonderful family, 5 amazing brothers, very, very large family, everything like that. And I felt like I was the black sheep. And I found myself in such a pattern of terrible relationships. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't return to school. I had no money. And I was bulimic.
It's tough being already a teenager, at 15, but I mean, here you're living really a secret life because you're purging and you're binging and people don't know what's going on, besides just looking at your life thinking it's, remember what I said, beautiful.
Now, was I ever happy? No. And, and I continued to go see the psychologist, and I continued to try all sorts of different medications. And, oh, what am I today? I'm a bipolar. Oh, I'm chronic depressed. Oh, I'm this, I'm that. I got diagnosed with everything. Okay. I just feel like problems lead to bigger problems like that. And that was the loop that I found myself in. Although that being said, I was still a very smart, intelligent girl. I was book smart. I just didn't have the emotional and psychological skills, the coping skills that any teenage girl should be equipped with. I would say we are all a product of our past, but we can choose how we look at that and learn from that and grow from that. By age 35, I still don't feel like I had learned how to communicate and how to speak. I had not found my voice. Because this is what this did for me, living in the isolation and everything. Now, what was I good at? I was really, really good at accounting. I mean, I could do bookkeeping like nobody's business. And guess what? You don't have to talk to anybody when you do that.
Yeah, how do you think you were able though to kind of maintain that image while kind of struggling?
Learning how to be a people pleaser. What do people expect from me? What do other people like to see? We're really, really good at that. Learning how to please other people and thinking, I don't need to think of myself. I'm living a lie. I just need to find the next place to throw up the food that I just ate. And so you learn to just put on the outward image for people, I guess like the pretty face and everything like that. and do the things that like what can I do? What can I control? I could work two jobs while going to college, and that will please other people. And so I did. I worked two jobs. I went to college. I paid for all of my school. My parents didn't have money. But here's another terrible thing that happened. Because I was a bulimic, it took me a very long time to even get a temporary job. But I had no money. I had no car. I rode the bus everywhere. And if I wanted food, I had to steal food. And I was a bulimic. Okay. And so you can imagine just the terrible, terrible like years of the lying, the hiding, just things that looking back, I'm like, oh, just the things that would just destroy a person's soul. But and I lived that life for 15 years on a daily basis. And I wondered and I pled with God to help me because I was addicted. I mean, it's a true addiction. Had all the health consequences of that. I had destroyed my enamel lining. You have like intestinal issues. I could share a lot of stories that are absolutely terrifying, that I could have ended up dying from. But what finally saved me was I could not stop it for myself because I didn't love myself enough. But what I could finally stop it for was babies. I wanted to be a mother more than anything in the world. And I certainly couldn't love myself, but I could love other people and I could love babies. And it was when I got pregnant was the day that I stopped cold turkey.
If someone's experiencing what you've gone through as a teen, what was your turning point? Which it sounds like it was your children or becoming a mom, I should say. Was it a slow climb out of it?
I would try the gradual approach, like, oh, I'll just try and cut back. Oh, that didn't work either. The approach that really, it honestly, and I would say, from what I've heard, which is, I wouldn't say I'm like a drug or addiction expert by any means or anything like that, but it has to be cold turkey. It has to be. I finally proved to myself that I didn't have to live that way. I didn't have to. I thought that I had to. How ridiculous is that? Because once I proved to myself that, like, no, I can do this every single day. And, like developing a habit, we'll say, give yourself 30 days of that habit.
So, what made you realize that you needed to make this change to even have a baby?
Just the thought that my body, Christy, doesn't need any nourishment, but the babies, they need nourishment. They need to be nurtured. I'm not worthy of that. I'm a sinner. That was my thought at that time. That was the belief that was so ingrained into me that it's just ridiculous.
So, you were also sexually abused.
My first incident, I was about, I'll say 3 years old because I have no memory before age 3. I had this family that lived next door to mine. And, in that area, most every single person was like, a good upstanding family that went to church every week. And, but the family next door, I remember they lived in filth and they drank alcohol, which in the church going neighborhood, again, this is Mormon, like, nobody drinks alcohol and coffee. But anyway, they had children that were a lot older than me. And me at age 3, I just remember going over there to play. And, they would take me down into their dirty, filthy basement and they would, take my pants off and they had like pots and pans. I can picture them in my mind, but they don't look like the standard like silver pots and pans because I remember they were colored. But anyway, they would tell me to like sit on those and go pee. And I didn't understand that all because, I was potty trained and they're like, like we pee here, we pee on the carpet and stuff. And I just remembered that they would unclothe me and just play with me, Now, I never ever would have dared tell my mom because even at age 3, I knew within me that that was wrong. Nobody told me that. And I think we're just born. We're just born as spirits to feel when something is not right.
I was obviously sexually abused. I think the challenge, and I hear this from people who have been sexually abused, when you're a kid and someone older is doing it to you, you think the older person knows right and wrong. So even though you're like, your gut is saying, hey, it's wrong, and it's wrong, it's hard to get your head wrapped around. I think we're built almost even at a young age to instantly blame ourselves. I think that's why when we go into adult relationships and then something happens, we don't blame them. We go to self blame initially. What did
Yeah.
we do that caused them to emotionally abuse us, physically abuse us? We don't think that they did anything. We think it's us.
I wonder, like, why wouldn't I have gone and told my mom? I mean, these were like 6 years older than me, like the oldest one. My whole memory of that time is extremely limited. But again, a few years later, about age 5, the same thing happened with a family down the street. Okay. I just shut everything off and I just lay. I don't kick and scream. I don't cry. I don't say no. And I can't say that I do at this point understand any of this still, but that ended up happening to me like a lot of times and then I think like by the time I was a teenager, I really, really wanted to be a good girl. In fact, in the teenage years, I don't even know if I should talk about these things. And you know what, Teresa, like I just got to tell you, like I'm such like an open book that I just talk openly about anything.
Yeah, I'm an open book, so I don't really care.
Yeah, yeah, like, I mean, this like sex happens, okay? I remember like my first experience with an actual boy that was like my age, okay? We went to like a school dance and I was 15 and I wanted to make the sweet 16, And I just remember that experience of like him forcing me to touch him and stuff. And I went home and I cried and I bawled and I remember praying and crying in the bathtub because I felt so dirty from this. One of the most devastating moments in my life. Well, let me list 4. I had sex, like with a boyfriend. I was 19 and a half. He was never a healthy boyfriend. Afterwards, I cried. It was not a good experience or anything like that. And I felt like I labeled myself as just being like unworthy and unvaluable and unlovable like the rest of my life. And any thought of me ever being with a good man at that point was completely eliminated because I had done that. All the good church boys that wanted to like find a girl and take her to the temple, like I was no longer that person. And, but I cried and I remember actually feeling the presence of my grandparents there that night, feeling like I had let everybody down. But shortly after that, I got raped. I don't mind talking about it now without giving much detail. But I think I still suffer sometimes the flashbacks and consequences from that one today. That was a rough one. So that was my second experience. However, I wouldn't say it was not conventional vaginal sex. It was only anal and I wasn't prepared and I didn't know and it was very, very physically abusive. And it was a guy, he had just barely gotten out of prison. And I don't know how I found myself in that situation. And I think deep down within me, there's still a thought that it was my fault. I felt like I had just eliminated any of my worth. So much for me being with like an amazing boy from the church and going and getting married in the temple and just being a normal person that gets to like, become a mother at age 20 or something like that. Now, we already know a bit of like my other baggage, right? Okay, so I was still carrying all of that. But anyway, so that was like a big deal. I would say there's an awful lot, Teresa, of my 20s that I have blocked out. There was just a lot of ugliness, but I do know like there was actually, and I say this because I feel like if this has happened to me, these same things have to have happened to other women that women are not speaking about it. And I just happen to be in a different place of my life where it's so far past me, I'm going to be judged and I'll be judged harshly. That's just kind of life. But
I think that's the
um
beauty of the 40s. We've hid for so long. We've
Yeah.
hid.
And you're like, "Well, what good did that do me? How did that help anybody else?"
Well, it affected us though. Think about all the relationships that we got into that we really shouldn't have got into because we suppressed it. We didn't talk about it. We were ashamed and we isolated. And I mean, that all created, like you said, no voice. And why not talk now? It was chapters of your life that, aren't so good, but like the next half, I think bringing awareness to people that people don't feel alone. So I want to talk about the marriage, the abuse, the infidelity and how you stayed too long. So, how
Yeah.
did you marry somebody who abused you, betrayed you? And so, how did that relationship begin?
I felt like I just wanted to be married and that would be safe. I didn't want to be single anymore and a target like that anymore. So first of all, I'll just say I clearly knew that his wife was cheating on him and that he was cheating on his wife. I had known him for many years, and initially I never thought that I would end up in a relationship with him. He called me one night crying. So he was going through a divorce. He let me know, like, after we'd been dating for a little bit, that the entire time he had been sleeping with her. So what does a healthy person say? You run. He came back and basically said, I'm sorry. I won't do that again. I realized it was a mistake. You're the person that I care for. I think I was very, very much at a down point in my life. I actually had lost a job that I was working at, and I had bought a house that I couldn't afford to live in, broke and scared and all of the things. And we got married way too quick, like 2 months from the day that his divorce was final. Now, I didn't realize at the time, but the whole entire affair, it never stopped. I didn't know that I was going into this marriage. He even admitted that he was a sex addict. I don't even know what I don't even know what that is.
I'm thinking about the beginning, like, what were your red flags that you ignored?
Okay, so first of all, I had already known him for several years, and I knew that he was clearly like meeting women at other hotels and sleeping with them. I spent years after the divorce going to years of counselors trying to understand how I valued myself so little that I would not even find like a bad relationship to get into, but I would find like the worst.
I'm thinking about your situation now. So, what would you say to someone that's stuck in a relationship that you know is damaging?
It may hurt for a minute right now, but it's going to hurt a lot more the longer you stay in it. Just get over it now. And also, I came to a point where I realized after, enduring so many years of it, that I had realized that it hit me that I'm like, you know what? The tears of loneliness would be far better than the tears from just enduring another round of abuse.
What do you think finally made you leave?
The day that I left, first of all, I remember my whole spiritual journey to motherhood is quite a story. But I was pregnant, and with my pregnancies, they were not easy. And by the time I finally did deliver the second set of twins that I had, my health was so poor and my physical strength so gone that I really had a very long road to recovering, like physically. And now I was left alone, really. I was entirely alone with two babies, and that was my only focus and my only care. Very slowly, I started physically getting stronger. And about 1 year after my twins were born, I remember feeling that sick, uncomfortable feeling in your gut where your spirit is just yelling at you that something is wrong. The thing is I didn't know what was wrong because at that time I had no clue of anything. I didn't understand the blow ups. I didn't understand why he was never home. There was just a lot of things I didn't, but I never would have dreamed that he was cheating. Okay. Which is so crazy. The final straw was I knew that I was physically getting stronger and I was starting to stand up for myself a little bit more. I knew that something would inevitably happen because, like, the emotional affair that I thought he was having was escalating. But also, it was not a good situation because I didn't have anywhere to go. So I was like, well, I can't go anywhere. It's just better if he would just, like, not come home ever. Then, at least I can just tolerate it. I can just raise the babies and just focus on them and not my marriage that is crumbling and has been crumbling since day one. But I started finding my voice more and standing up for myself a little bit more and trying to have conversations with him saying like, this is not fair to me. This is not how other people, in my understanding, which was so warped, but my understanding is like, I don't think that other men treat their wives the way that you treat me. One day, I made an amazing friend and she was like, she's probably about 90 now, but I called her like the Jesus woman. And I loved to just soak her in. And she made me feel good. And I loved her so much. I had just spent an afternoon going on a walk with her, taking the babies, and I came home and his phone rang and my heart starts pounding and the skin raises on my arms. And I'm going, this is getting worse. Am I going crazy? Something's wrong. And I start listening to him talking on the phone and he was like downright just flirting. And I walked in the room and I said, this is not fair to me. And he said, you don't like it? Leave. And you know what I did? I said, I'm leaving. I didn't think I was leaving for good. I thought that I was just going to take the babies and I was just going to take little duffel bag and give him some time to realize that the light is leaving his life and he needs to shape up. Like this was going to be a wake up call, right? It didn't get better. It didn't wake him up. He was like, you should leave more often. This is great. Are you going to stay gone? His responses were not the responses of a normal man that loved his wife, that loved his children.
Knowing he was kind of reacting the way he was reacting, was that done at that point? you never returned home?
No, I didn't. I didn't. I had every intention to. I truly wanted to save my marriage. I wanted to save my family. I hoped that it was going to be a wake up call. But what ended up happening after that, I found this guy that was a relationship psychologist. And 50 minutes into talking to him and sharing, like, I want to save my family. We have these two perfect babies. You know, I'm willing to do the work. I'm always willing to be the hard worker and to fix everything and to be the peacemaker. I shared with him the things that had been going on. And he said to me, looked me in the eye and said, I see how much you love your children. And the only advice I'm going to give you is that you leave him because I see how much you love your children. Your husband is physically cheating on you. And I was like, how dare you say that? I realized that he is a jerk and he is a creep and he says some really nasty things, but he would never cheat on me. As I was so in shock that I got in a car accident on the way home. And I got home and I called him. I'm like, you're not going to believe this. I'm never going to go back to this guy again. But he said that you were cheating on me, like physically. And I told him that's absolutely not true. And he's like, yeah, he's right. I was like, what? He said, like, you knew who I was when you married me. Before we got married, you accepted it. Why would I think that you wouldn't continue to forgive me after that? The reason I'm telling you now is I can see that you're going crazy.
Were you the one to get the divorce?
I recall that he actually said, and I was beside myself bawling, he said, I'm sorry, and I'll let you be the one to get the divorce. And that's what it ended up being.
Tell us kind of about the moment your twin boys were born. And then obviously, they left and, went to heaven. And so tell us about that.
That was definitely like the most heart-changing experience of my life. I wanted to be a mother more than even being married. I wanted to be a mother, honestly, to just be able to give love. It was a very spiritual process for me. Also during that time, I was daily praying that I felt like I was saved from that terrible gripping addiction. And I started bleeding early on in the pregnancy. And they told me the placenta tore away from the uterus, and I bled almost the whole pregnancy and found out that I was having two boys. When I was about 20 weeks, I went to the bathroom at work and my water broke and went to the hospital. And, I'm just like, I'll sit here. These babies are fine. They're strong. They're healthy. I know their hearts are going to keep beating. I sat there and was determined. If determination could get them here, then I would get them here. My oldest brother came into the hospital to see me, and I had asked him, to just give me a blessing. And he actually told me that these little boys would always be with me and that they would always recognize me as their mother. I was looking for him to tell me, to promise that everything was going to be fine. He didn't say that. And he left. And right then I started coughing and I knew something was wrong. And the doctors came up and they took my blood. They came back a few minutes later and said, your white blood cell count is like at 2,000. We're going to have to take these babies out because otherwise we're going to lose you. And so they wheeled me back in the delivery room. I sat there and thought, as I'm holding these boys, they are in my womb. Their hearts are beating. They're healthy, they're strong, they're measuring far ahead of schedule of what they should be because, I nourished them so well and I ate so much protein and all the good things that, you should do as a pregnant person. And I bawled knowing that they had given me the drugs that were going to force me to deliver and that soon I was going to have to push these healthy live babies out and that they would not be able to survive outside of the womb. And they weren't going to do any life-saving measures or anything like that at that point. It was just, you'll hold them and you'll say goodbye to them. And there was nothing I could do. Me, the person always striving for control, there was no control. And I remember being afraid that I wouldn't be able to tell them apart. But once I had them, they were so perfect, so perfectly formed, so beautiful. I remember so much of their features and comparing them to each other. And it was really just a lot of crying, a lot of tears, but also it was a very spiritual situation. And I felt like God was as gentle as he could be to me, but he needed to change me. He knew that this was his way of gently helping me become the person that I needed to become.
Yeah, so because I was going to ask, how did that moment break you? And how did that moment build you?
I made so many promises to myself and it was so painful. And also I looked at it like in the blessing I with you, he had said that they will always be with you. and they will always recognize you as their mother. I now had a witness to my life on the other side. I now had somebody that all the things that I did in secret, nothing is in secret. It's all going to be revealed. Everything is going to be known. And there's certainly is people on the other side that can see everything. And for me, I looked at them like they are my warriors and my missionaries, because what they did is they changed my heart that needed to be changed permanently. I needed that great big huge wake up call to completely change my life from what it had been from 30 years prior, there at age 31.
To go through that and then 1 year later have twins. Were you fearful or were you healing
Oh
at
no,
that?
I was terrified. I was terrified. I thought, okay, it'd be much easier to just carry one baby, but also my husband did not want to do it again. He didn't. And there was other things going on there. So I felt like I was very much on like my own journey. What ended up happening, they let me know that I was automatically a high risk pregnancy, and therefore I'd have to be monitored much more closely than just a normal woman, not to mention that it's twins. I went in for a routine checkup at 21 weeks, and they let me know that I was fully effaced and that I was ready to deliver. And did I want to take any life-saving measures, because my son would have a 19% chance to live and my daughter a 23% chance. And I was like, are you kidding? No, you don't understand. I can't survive this again. This would kill me. And they're like, well, we're immediately putting you in the operating room and we expect that you're going to deliver within 48 hours. So now I had my other brother come in and give me a blessing. Okay. And you know what he said? He said all the words I wanted to hear. Everything's going to be fine. You're going to carry these babies to term, and they're going to be born healthy, and they're going to be a blessing to you and your family.
I almost could cry if I'm hearing it right in the way that you're saying. So you lose your first set of twins at 21 weeks. Then you go and you realize you have another set of twins a year later. Did you just say that you had the same scare at 21 weeks that you did in your first set?
Yeah. So now on the first set, my water broke. The second set, it was at 21 weeks. You are fully effaced and ready to deliver right now, and you're not going home. And I was like, I am not hearing this. The thing that gave me great hope, and what I knew that somehow this was a test of my faith, that when my brother came in and said those words, I truly believed when he said, everything is going to be fine. I clung to that hope. They just let me know, all the doctors, okay, we're just anticipating that you're going to go into, you're having contractions like every 2 minutes. We're going to put you on some anti-contraction drugs and, do what we can to slow things down. But once your water breaks, you're delivering. We're taking them. And they're likely not going to survive. So do you want us to take any life-saving measures or not? Yes, I want you to take first, like, this is not going to happen. Like, you don't understand. I had a blessing and I know, like, God said, everything's going to be fine. And I'm going to prove you guys all wrong. And I was confined to this room for weeks and weeks. My husband at that time, he had decided when I was getting a blessing, he OD'd on drugs. Okay. And decided he was going to start going to rehab. So it was really a lot of emotional abuse and bad things going on at that time with my marriage. And I was very much afraid, knowing this is really just me and God.
So when did you end up having your babies?
Actually, they let me go home at 30 weeks, saying, we will see you right back here. My due date was the end of January. And I ended up carrying them to 38 weeks, and I had to get induced, just like my blessing said. And, the doctor the woman doctor I told you about that I loved, she said to me, it was your sheer determination that got these babies here to term. And I was like going, you can call it that, but I know this was between me and God. And he promised that everything would be okay and that they would be born healthy. Now, me, on the other hand, I had a long road to recover.
How do you think that experience shifted your view on life?
For me, my whole journey to motherhood was incredibly spiritual. I really relied so much on, the Savior and God and prayer, and the memories of that, they'll stay with you. When life is so easy, it's so easy to forget. When you are so broken, you can feel the closeness.
I want to talk about the rise from the $30,000 year mom to this 7-figure success. Because here's what I'll say. That to me is not just surviving, that is thriving. So
Yeah.
I have 4 questions to ask you. At 35, you had your toddler twins and you never made more than 30,000. What flipped the script?
Yeah, talk about not knowing your value, not understanding your value, and letting people walk all over you. Okay, so first of all, I started my firm 12 years ago. I worked at the corporate offices of a franchise company for 10 years prior to that. I really grew that franchise company. I made them a ton of money. They hired me for $20,000 a year. I believed that they would see my value and what I did for their company and that they would compensate me fairly. And I continued to stay. Now, mind you, I tried to interview at all the companies all over Utah, trying to find any other place that would pay me $30,000 a year. I knew I was smart. I knew that I was great at accounting and like all of that. And I was like the best bookkeeper, right? Total expert with QuickBooks. I stayed there for 10 years and they never saw my value, but I certainly learned so much at that company. I was like, managing the entire, like all the accounting, few hundred franchises, reviewing all of their QuickBooks files, telling them all the things that were wrong, constantly negotiating, trying to find the best value for these struggling business owners that I was privileged to work with. And I cared so much about them and I appreciated the relationships that I had. When I got pregnant with the first set of twins, I was really working around the clock. I was doing all the accounting and IT support, and I would work often through the night updating their software systems. They had like advanced point of sale systems for these retail shops and stuff like that. And it was very, very exhausting and I couldn't keep up with it. And because I was so sick and tired when I got pregnant, I said, how about I cut back to full time, like 40 hours a week. I see all these store owners struggling that need help with the accounting side of things. I share all these reports with them, that all these things are wrong and that I could help them. And they really don't know how to fix it and make it right. And I started that side of things in 2009. Anyway, fast forward a little bit, I felt this burning urge when my babies were 18 years old that I needed to start my own business. I did not know that by age 2, I would be leaving and going the path towards divorce and becoming a single mom. I just felt inspired that I needed to start my own business and this wonderful service that I was providing to all these franchise owners that they so loved and these great relationships, that I also wanted to offer this type of a service to other people outside of a franchise company. Like they were lucky to get to have somebody like me that was an expert with accounting and QuickBooks and this advanced point of sale system and all this stuff. And I quickly grew. I put out like a local ad and I started helping business owners just on the side, in addition to this little accounting bookkeeping business within the franchise.
So you keep your full-time job. What was the mindset or the moment that kind of launched you into your next chapter?
Well, here's another thing about me too. How I told you I bought that house and I couldn't afford to live there, and I couldn't make my job pay me more than I made, and I couldn't live in a house for $30,000 a year by myself. I started a resale business at that time. I started going to the DI. You might not know what that is. It's like the Goodwill. You buy things for $5 at the thrift store. And then I would sell them for $20 or $25 or $30 or $50 if I got really lucky. And I was like, well, I can't make any more at my W-2 job that I'm working full time, but I know that I'm a hard worker. So at least that's a skill that I have. I could go start this little online business, go shopping at these thrift stores and take my $5 that I earn and turn it into $20 or $15. Or even if I double it, I'm doing good. So I had this side business that was resell, and I never stopped doing that. And I still have that going on. But you know what it did to my mind? It really created me to be an entrepreneur and for me to look at things and say, if I can pay $5 for something and turn it into $20 or $50, and I do that so many times, I'm going to make money, and I'm willing to hustle and I'm willing to work hard. I may not be good or great at other things, but I can work hard. And so I started doing that on the side to pay off some of the debt. And then I started helping business owners on the side while at the franchise company. Because again, I can't make any more than the W-2. It is what it is. I can find little things to do on the side to help me keep some food on the table or buy a roll of toilet paper. And you learn a lot of lessons from being flat broke and desperate, right?
You get creative.
Yeah, and I did. I got really creative. Now, in my marriage, the whole thing was like, it's a good thing you're pretty because you sure are stupid. And I adopted that. I believed it. And I didn't believe that I was worth much. And also, I think a lot of times we put a label on ourselves that we are worth as much as we make, which is so not true. But that was kind of, again, as we know, it's been a struggle for me to find my value. So, but yeah, getting divorced, I'd never made more than that. But I did start my own business right about that time. And it grew and it grew rapidly, and word spread that, she's really good. She's great to work with. She's like really good with the accounting stuff. And I cared. I really, really cared and was so grateful that these business owners would let me help them with their accounting. Now, how that business ended up changing was I found my husband at age 40, and I found somebody that would love me unconditionally for the first time in my life and tell me how amazing that I was and allow me to spread my wings. At that time, I didn't want to get into the tax preparation world, okay? Because, IRS, how boring, right? Plug a number, spit out a return, you owe $50,000. That's miserable. But let's go back to this whole resale concept, okay? I've been doing that for years and years and years. I'm a hustler. I realized as I started working with more accountants, I got very, very passionate about tax strategy. Mind you, I had now done bookkeeping since 1998, and it was like that's piece of cake. It's nothing. Like I could do a 2,000 transaction catch up job in an hour. I'm fast. I'm good. I don't even have to think about it. So it became my mind was developed in that aspect enough that it was just give me a challenge. Like I have this wonderful base of people that I'm helping do the bookkeeping for. And constantly they're like, well, Christy, why don't you just do all our tax stuff too? And so, I'm like, I probably should. I probably should just figure out and do that. And so I like entertain the thought and stuff like that. But like I said, I ended up learning about this tax strategy and getting so passionate. And like anything in my life, I'm like, it just felt like my calling. Why did I get so excited and passionate about all things tax savings? First of all, I know what it's like to struggle. And I'm like, well, if I can save tax money, if I can get married to my now wonderful, amazing husband and we're going to grow a life together, how can I save some of the tax money that we're paying? If you can't make any more, can I keep more? Right? These business owners that are like, oh my gosh, like you're paying $50,000 taxes. And as I start learning all these things and getting more involved in this world, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get the best education, coaches. I'm passionate about this and I want to help this already, base of, I was already working with a couple hundred business owners anyway. And really so grateful and thankful for them that I wanted to give back. If I can help a business owner keep 40,000 in their pocket and not pay taxes, how is that conveying my value? Says the girl that struggles to to see her value. Okay. That I had no idea starting that it would blow up the way that it has, and the word of mouth and I also didn't understand that this is something that is so hard to find somebody that's really good at. And I get it. It all just clicks. And now I've somehow been so inspired and run into so many amazing relationships in this whole quest to find all the tax strategy, tax saving tools that you can help a business owner do legally, of course, that I've had so many doors open for me that now I've become like that person. And the more I work with business owners and they're talking to people and stuff, I'm working with bigger businesses and bigger money. And hey, I have a friend that's making $1 million this year. Well, taxes on $1 million is $300,000. You know what? I know that I can help them not pay that legally.
Now that you've, started your new business and stuff, what do people misunderstand about success, do you think?
What do they misunderstand about success? I mean, I would say like at this point in my life, a lot of people will look at me with like, the luxuries that I have to enjoy and where I've gone with my business and think that it was almost handed over to me on a silver platter. Like I mentioned to you, I'm like the overnight success that was 30 years in the making. This is this chapter that I'm in right now. I already know that this is not the destination. But I do know, and I'm extremely grateful that what I'm doing right now today in my career, day in and day out, I know that it's preparing me for something down the road. I don't know what that is. I don't know what's in store for me.
So I want to end with these 4 questions. What do you wish every woman knew about their worth?
I wish that every woman would just see their own worth and not adopt what other people think about them or say that their worth is. It needs to be intrinsic. You've got people around you that are going to both love you and hate you. And it has to be internal. It has to be within yourself. Now, that being said, make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that do see your worth as well, because they will, as much as you want to just intrinsically know your value and your worth and constantly, love yourself the way that you should. The things that people say that you surround yourself with are going to have an impact. And there's just no way around that.
Yeah, for sure. What would you whisper to your younger self?
I guess that this is maybe one of the things that, as I'm now married, one of the things that I constantly think that I would say to my single person is, and also to my younger self, is just become the person that you want to meet. And just know that if you keep that as your focus, like those are the people that are going to inevitably like come into your life. But I mean, also, especially to my younger self, I would say like, love yourself. And again, know God has a plan for you and your life and knows exactly who you are and why you're here. And never ever lose sight of that. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yeah. What does thriving mean to you now?
I'd say like thriving, it's like living your best life, being like in a place where you can become the best version of yourself. We all have like different and unique talents. Like my talents are not the same as yours. And, but let your light shine and find your passion and like pursue that, just go be your best, happiest version of yourself. That to me is thriving.
I would totally agree. How do you define peace after pain?
Well, I think it's for me, certainly being grateful for the pain, embracing that, accepting that's a beautiful part of yourself. There's nothing to regret and, not judging. You can't judge yourself. We're all beautiful and we were all created for a purpose, and every single person has something to contribute to the world.
Yeah, I love that. I just wanted to thank you for being vulnerable today. It's a big deal to me. So I wanted to thank you for doing this with me today.
It's my pleasure. And you're, of course, just absolutely amazing and so wise. Women need more of you.
What if everything that was meant to destroy you actually shaped the strongest parts of you? What if the pain wasn't the ending, but the beginning of your power? Today's episode is a reminder that surviving isn't the end goal. Thriving is. And no matter what your past looks like, the trauma, the heartbreak, the rock bottom, you're not stuck. You can build something beautiful from it. So I want to leave you with this. You are not broken. You are not too far gone. You are not defined by what happened to you. You get to write the next chapter. Make it the one where you rise. I'll see you next week.